Okay, so it's 4 o'clock. So my name is Erin Ledlow. I will be moderating this session. And Jane is on Treaty 1 territory, but I am coming to you from a land traditionally known as the Beaver Hunting Grounds. The land where my current home resides was first occupied by the Attawandaron or neutral peoples. It was then taken over by the Mississaugas of the Credit. And then currently today, Six Nations of the Grand River, a community known as the Haudenosaunee people, call this region their home. And the Haudenosaunee were granted this land for their allegiance to the British Crown during the American War of Independence. I'm currently trying to honor my treaty obligations by volunteering at a local Haudenosaunee organization. And this was said today, and really, obviously, everything Nigan says resonates with me, but he said, we have to acknowledge so that we can see each other and then we can act to make the revolution together. When asked what can we do by a student in the Upper Grand District School Board in Ontario, Isaac Murdoch, who's an Ojibwe artist, said, from Serpent River First Nation, said, if you really want to help, what you will do is protect the lands and waters. Helping students find motivation to protect the land and the waters is the work that Land Ed does. So I am pleased to introduce Jane Hilder to you today. Jane is a landscape designer at Little Bluestem Landscape Architecture. She completed her Master of Landscape Architecture degree at the University of Manitoba with an undergrad in environmental design. Jane's practicum work explored the notion of integrating environmental education in elementary school programming, connecting youth to the land they live on through the lens of landscape architecture. She's been continuing this work at LBLA in the Land Ed program. So welcome, Jane.
Thanks, Erin. Let me share my screen now. All good? Mm-hmm. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for choosing to attend this presentation today. We'll be discussing landscape equity and one technique for performing an assessment of outdoor space. This presentation will also include an activity, so you'll need paper and something to write with. I'm a landscape designer at Little Bluestem Landscape Architecture, or LBLA, a firm based in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We work with stakeholders on design projects ranging from schoolyards, commercial properties, parks, playgrounds, and streetscapes to hiking trails and outdoor recreation systems. During our 7 years in business, we've had the privilege of working with many school divisions and childcare centers to develop design concepts for outdoor learning and greening school grounds. We've observed over the years that these school initiatives are often championed by a small group of passionate people who advocate for outdoor learning. LBLA is trying to develop long-lasting outdoor places that will survive even when these passionate teachers and families have moved on to different schools and can no longer maintain them. In 2016, the Landscape Architecture Foundation published a call to action for all landscape architects worldwide to consider how we design and how we work in the face of climate change and social conflict. Particular attention was brought to the fact that the landscape is the ultimate common thread of the human experience. And as landscape architects, we can influence this thread by designing with careful consideration to the environment and informed decision-making. The quote that we found the most inspiring is on the screen here. Across borders and beyond walls, from city centers to the last wilderness, humanity's common ground is the landscape itself. To enact the spirit of the Landscape Declaration, LBLA created the environmental education program, Land Ed. So landscape education, and then one word. With input from Manitoban educators, we developed lesson plans, outdoor education guides, and landscape activities with the intent to bring learning outside while still matching the goals of the Manitoba curriculum and being able to adapt to Ontario and Alberta as well. We believe that the guiding mission of landscape architecture is the same as that which makes good social citizens: consideration of environment and culture, natural resource management, mental and physical health advocacy, and social equity. The sooner in life that these principles are introduced, the better we can equip the next generation to understand and care for the environment. Our Land Ed team right now consists of the owner of LBLA, Darcy Grenove, our Education and Outreach Coordinator, Dylan Huntley, and myself. What I would like to share with you today is the concept of land equity and what it means in terms of the design of outdoor spaces at schools and in the neighborhood context. We'll do an inquiry-based activity together, one that I hope you'll be able to use with your students in the future. With the considerations and resources presented here, you should be able to envision the outdoors as an extension of the classroom. Let's begin with term definitions. The term equality is commonly used to explain the intention of everyone having the same opportunities and assets. However, this does not address pre-existing circumstances, such as physical location, financial availability, and systemic disadvantages. The term equity is preferable, as it does address pre-existing circumstances and seeks action to improve and make fair the quality of life for those at a disadvantage. An equality initiative might be to deliver 10 new saplings to each school in a city to green the schoolyards, but an equitable initiative would account for how many trees already exist in the schoolyards and deliver the appropriate amount of saplings for each school to have the same environment. This does not mean that schools with a great outdoors design cannot improve. It means that as they improve, we have to advocate for schools that need extra work and funding to meet their level. This advocacy, from the schoolyard to beyond, is done to achieve land equity. To quote from terracorps.com, land equity is the term we use to describe the state of being in which all people have access to the benefits of land. This means that when we are advocating for environmental education to be integrated in the curriculum, whether that be applications for funding or discussions with administration or local government, we can bolster our case when we're familiar with the green space available, both in and around our schools. In the case of this graphic, both schools have access to green space, though it is in different forms. Long-term goals for development would create both a schoolyard and community context that is accessible and green, but as many schools exist within private residential or industrial areas, this is not immediately possible. Most often, we can achieve accessible green space through a schoolyard landscape plan. Another quote from terracorp.com states that, by understanding land equity, we acknowledge the interconnections of social justice, sustainable conservation, and ecological resilience. Through a land equity approach, we begin the process of diversifying opportunity, building capacity, and acknowledging the richness of many forms of knowledge. So knowing that we have to work within the context we are given, there is a basic formula we can follow to assess our context and determine its shortcomings and room for improvement. This formula, and the infographic pictured here, comes from the Project for Public Spaces Collective. Assessing landscape space from an entire city down to a place as small as a schoolyard, the Power of 10 rule states that each distinct space should offer 10 distinct experiences. These 10 experiences might include a place to sit, play structure to climb on, art to view, or history to experience. Ideally, some of these activities will be unique to that particular place, reflecting the culture and history of the surrounding environment. Local residents, in this case the students, who use the space most regularly will be a great source of ideas for which experiences exist and which are missing. The Power of 10 is the jumping off point for our activity. The digital rendering shown here is a conceptual design we developed for a Winnipeg elementary school whose faculty had requested an outdoor learning space. Currently, this area is an empty patch of lawn. The outdoor classroom could count as one unique space, but the design actually includes several unique experiences, with areas designated for sitting, group discussion, and presenting, and less programmed spaces in between for students to interpret. When considering what you as an educator want to advocate for your students, you can run an exercise either virtually, in person, indoors, or outdoors to assess the space that you have. Today, we'll be doing this exercise virtually. This map is a plan or bird's eye view of the rendering on the previous slide. This type of map is developed by landscape architects to convey the intentions of a design, but starts as a simple pen or pencil sketch showing building shapes and sizes of space. You can see the trees here are represented as circles with irregular edges. Benches are small rectangles, and a path is 2 parallel lines. When you're conducting this with your students or drawing your own map, I would just encourage you to use whatever symbols make sense to you. So that leads us into our activity. To begin, I would like you to visualize an outdoor space that you're very familiar with, either one from your childhood or your current teaching location. The example that we'll review after the activity will be a schoolyard space, but you could choose a public green space like a park to map instead, somewhere that you're able to take students. With your pen and paper, draw a bird's eye view sketch of your chosen space, including details like trees, benches, basketball courts, etc. Examples of symbols you could use are shown in step 1. So like the school, the play structure, a tree, or a baseball field. You can just keep it very, very simple. Next, once you have your simple map drawn, you're going to identify 10 unique locations, essentially just labeling the symbols you drew in step 1. Next, in 3 words or less, you'll describe the experience that each location has to offer. Finally, make a list for yourself on the side of the paper that addresses what you feel is missing from the space. This is particularly important if you found it challenging to identify at least 10 unique locations and experiences. So the example for steps 2 through 4 is we drew a hill, we labeled it hill. We said that the experience is a place to climb, but then we acknowledged that this theoretical space has no place to sit in the shade. So you'll have some time to do that now. And if you have any questions about the activity or anything I've mentioned so far, you can put them in the chat and we can discuss while we draw. Erin, did anything come up in the chat while I was talking so far?
Not as of yet.
So I think maybe give about 3 or 4 minutes. And then if you're completed your map, just type done or okay in the chat, and then I can know when to move on. Okay, so I'm gonna move forward now. Yeah, so just wherever you got to, that's good. And I'll show you the completed activity on the next slide. So you'll get some idea of how you could do this with your students. So this map is of a school in Winnipeg, which also happens to be my elementary school. And this one was done digitally. So if you have students who are familiar with Illustrator or another kind of digital drawing program, they could actually do this activity by tracing a satellite image. Upon initial inspection of this map, there are easily 10 locations to label that provide experiences for students. Since I graduated from here, they've really upped their design, and there's an outdoor classroom, there's a hill with trees on it, and there's gardens. It's really great. However, reviewing the use that is intended for each location, there are actually only about 6 unique experiences available in the immediate outdoor space, represented here by the 6 colors. Those 6 experiences are a place to survey your surroundings, a place to walk or run, a place to sit, a place to play programmed sports, a place to use a play structure, and a place to grow plants. Knowing that even a fully designed schoolyard does not meet the 10 unique experiences challenge should give some idea of the room for growth in most outdoor school spaces. Running this activity with your students, they may identify the same locations as you did, but be able to find new ways to experience them. If you are conducting this activity in person, you can divide the students into groups, with each group getting 10 markers and going outside to place them, later returning as a class and explaining the reasoning for their chosen locations. This infographic also comes from the Project for Public Spaces Collective. If the results of the 10 Experiences Challenge resulted in several locations with the same type of experience, you can use this graph to understand why. This also leads into our community connection. Particularly if your school does not meet the 10 experiences quota, you can discuss with your students how it connects to the larger community. According to the Project for Public Spaces Collective, a great place should have an even distribution of experiences and opportunities that fall into one of the 4 key attributes, represented here by the innermost circle: sociability, uses and activities, access and linkages, and comfort and image. The second circle represents the intangibles, how a place makes us feel. Is it friendly, comfortable, sustainable, etc.? The outer circle represents the measurements, how the intangible feelings can be quantified, such as this space excels in access and linkages because it feels connected, and the reason it feels connected is because there's a proper transit system. These categories can be a tool for educators who are looking to evaluate potential outdoor classroom space or conducting neighborhood assessments with their class. Let's break down the 4 key attributes and their application to schoolyard and community space. For the sake of this comparison, we've taken the text away from the measurements outer circle, as it refers directly to city features with terms like rent levels and traffic data. I'll show how the circle can be filled in by your students later. The first key attribute is uses and activities. And in the context of the schoolyard, the key question is, are students drawn to participate in diverse activities in this place? Prompting questions to ask your students might include, is this place used by students from different grades? Can the place be used for more than one type of activity? Or which parts of the space are used and which are not? The second key attribute is sociability, which addresses whether students return often to this place to gather and socialize. You can ask students, is this a place where you would choose to meet your friends? Are other groups of friends meeting here? Are students talking with one another? And do many students use this place frequently? The third key attribute is comfort and image, whether students feel safe in this place and whether this place adds to the schoolyard or neighborhood in a way that is visually pleasant. Prompting questions include, does this place make a good first impression? Are there enough places to sit? Do students have a choice of places to sit, either in the sun or the shade? Does the area feel safe? The fourth and final key attribute is access and linkages. This attribute is particularly relevant when considering green space connections beyond the schoolyard. Even within the schoolyard, you can address whether all students can reach this place easily and how well it is connected to other spaces, with prompt questions such as, is there a good connection between this place and adjacent buildings? Does the space function well for people with disabilities and other special needs? Do the paths throughout the space take students where they actually want to go? The Great Place Infographic is a useful tool for conducting a place evaluation with your students. If they want to assess their schoolyard or a specific location within it, have them place markers on the intangibles circle. Viewing the infographic as a whole will show which areas the location succeeds in, the quadrants with the most markers, and which areas there is room for improvement. In the empty measurements circle, students can add concrete terms that they believe exist or should exist to strengthen their chosen location. For example, this place feels special and fun because there is colorful paving. However, there's no place for groups to sit. This is just a hypothetical place. If you're interested in using this infographic with your class, our email will be shared at the end of the presentation, and you can send a message requesting a free digital copy. The original content and more can be found at the Project for Public Spaces website, which I am going to type into the chat right now. It's very short, pps.org. Okay. Once you have discussed the 4 key attributes with your students and drawn conclusions regarding the shortcomings in your schoolyard and or community, the final step to our inquiry project-based approach is to take action. Ask yourself, how can your schoolyard benefit your local community? This is an opportunity to get your school involved in helping mitigate issues of equity, green space, food scarcity, wildlife habitats. All these are areas that could be addressed from your own school. Equity, the work to elevate all human lives to a place of equal opportunity, can be extended to equity of the environment. What animal species are locally endangered? What plant habitats need protection to establish? Curriculum connections, specifically for social studies, were taken into account in our content creation. The Manitoba, Ontario, and Alberta social studies curriculums all support place-based design. Specific learning outcomes from Manitoba early and middle years position the environment and how we use it to orient ourselves as a key component of the curriculum. Additionally, senior years learning outcomes specifically look at how our relationship to place helps shape our identity. In Ontario, social studies specifically looks at people and the environment, supporting the idea that humans and our experiences are deeply rooted in the environments that shape us. We'll finish the presentation today by showing a sample of the resources we offer on our website. Our most in-depth resources are our lesson plans, which were developed with educators and peer-reviewed to fit the curriculum while still pushing boundaries and encouraging outdoor education. The inquiry activity presented today is an amalgamation of two of our lesson plans. The first is called Just Outside My Door, in which students perform a neighborhood assessment from a landscape architectural perspective. And the second one is Exploring Habitats and Endangered Species, in which students are introduced to the importance of biodiversity and activism. Several more lesson plans in a variety of topics are available, and a series of free worksheets that students can use for reflection and inquiry can also be found on the website. Each lesson plan offers ways for educators to adapt the activities to remote learning and encourages the use of the outdoors as frequently as the indoor classroom. LandEd teachers' guides are available for free on our website. They offer tips for incorporating outdoor learning into your classroom's regular routine. We have a general introductory guide and guides tailored to each season of the year with suggested activities. This resource was designed with early years students in mind, but you may find some activity inspiration here for middle years or senior years as well. Over the spring and summer of 2020, the first wave of the COVID pandemic, LandEd developed a weekly video series that got children out of their house and engaging in nature activities that promoted plant literacy, mental health, experimentation, and design. These activities were largely developed in response to COVID's limitations, offering teachers and parents some inspiration to help children learn outside, either from home or school. Season 1 of Teaching Tuesday is available at our YouTube channel at LandEd MB for Manitoba. We're looking forward to continuing this series, and we have lots of ideas for activities in mind. Our most recent resource creation is this series of classroom posters, sharing the process of becoming a LandEd wilderness warrior. We developed this term to describe someone who is interested in, knowledgeable about, and an advocate for environmental protection. We hope the simple steps of explore, investigate, and act inspire discussions in your classrooms. For attending our presentation today, we have a promo code for you to use on any of the paid resources on our website. We have lots of free content as well, but the code SSENC 2021 will give you 50% off on everything and is valid until November 8th. I'm also going to add that to the chat. There you go. So, like I said, there's more resources on our website, and we're constantly working to produce new content. So if you'd like to connect with us and follow our work, you can find us at all these social media handles. If you have any questions that you would like to discuss in length, we'd love to hear from you over email, which is at the bottom of the list. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to talk about now, I'm happy to answer. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you so much, Jane. So I will open up the time if anyone has any questions for Jane or what they do. Feel free to just put it in the chat, or is it okay with you, Jane, if they unmute and ask?
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone wanted to share, if they did the mapping activity, to share what they found about their landscape, I'd really love to see it or hear about it. It's the end of a long day too.
Yes.
Well, if no one has anything to share today, I do hope that you'll reach out over email. Actually, especially if you drew a map, we're hoping to share some on our Instagram story. Yeah.
Sorry, I was typing a question. I didn't want to interrupt you at all. But so I'm from Quebec, and our social science courses are taught in French in my school board for elementary students, and our science courses as well. And so I was curious if there was any intention to translate any of these documents into French, or to consider the Quebec curriculum, and maybe if there was a plan to expand beyond the 3 provinces you guys have worked within.
Yeah, we haven't had any requests for translation services yet. You would actually be the first one, but So a lot of the landscape designs we do involve like some sort of interpretive signage, and we often have to translate like English and French and Ojibwe languages. So
Yes.
we do have connections with translators. So yeah, if you were directly interested in something, we could absolutely get it translated for you.
Okay, well, I'll if it comes further, if I offer it to teachers and say like there's these possibilities, I'll definitely be in contact.
That's great. Yeah, I think right now it would be on a case-by-case basis. We would get like lesson plans or the posters translated, but if that becomes a thing in the future, we would offer that on the website as well. Thank you for bringing that up. I hadn't considered it.
Are there any other questions for Jane today? Doesn't look like it. So,
all right.
I just wanted to thank you again, Jane. And if the participants here would like to just, I think the formal closing is at 5:15. And you can take the time now just to go to some of the exhibitor booths. And thank you so much for coming and attending the conference today. We really appreciated having you all, and thank you for being here.